Hey, I'm Adrian.
And I'm Max, and welcome to Queer Defined.
Queer Defined is a mini video series about queer topics and how to better support our community.
We started Queer Defined out of a lack of acknowledgement for queer people throughout history, and then decided to make a video series discussing queer past and queer present.
There are a lot of identities that make up the LGBTQIA plus community, so we'd like to offer some definitions to those who are less knowledgeable.
We're going to start off with some genders and then get into the sexualities.
So first off, queer. Queer is an umbrella term to describe individuals who don't identify as straight or cisgender. Historically, it's been a slur used to refer to someone who isn't straight or cisgender, and it's not embraced or reclaimed by all LGBTQIA plus people, but we are okay with the term, and so we are using it in this series.
Cisgender, that is the gender for describing someone who was given the gender that they were assigned with at birth, according to their sex. And then cishet is just short for cisgender heterosexual.
So transgender is an umbrella term for anyone who does not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth, and this includes female to male transitions, male to female transitions, non-binary people like me, genderqueer people, and much more.
Non-binary is also under the transgender umbrella, and it is an umbrella term itself for all non-binary identities. Those are identities that do not follow the traditional binary oppositions as male-female or man or woman, and it is what I identify as well using they, them pronouns.
Because of non-binary genders, gender-neutral language can be really, really important. For example, using partner instead of boy/girlfriend, nibbling instead of niece or nephew, and the title mix instead of Mr. or Miss. Like, don't add the letter X at the end to replace all gender terms, especially if that word isn't in your culture. The topic that we'll go more in depth into in another episode is using Latin instead of Latinx to be gender inclusive.
Gender fluid is a gender identity label often used by people whose sense of self in relation to their gender changes from time to time. The time frame might be over the course of many months, days, shorter or longer, but the consistent experience is one change.
So genderqueer is a gender identity label often used by people who don't identify with the binary of man on one end and woman on the other. It's also an umbrella term for many gender non-conforming or non-binary identities, kind of like queer.
Then you have bigender is a person who fluctuates between traditionally woman and man gender-based behavior identities, identifying with two genders as being two separate things.
And then there's agender, which would be a person who has no connection to the traditional system of gender, no personal alignment with the concept of either man or woman, or someone like who's in between. And so a person like this would see themselves as existing without gender.
Then you have two-spirit. Two-spirit is a term that can only be used by Indigenous North Americans, and it is an umbrella term to describe a traditional third gender role in Indigenous society. It has ceremonial and social significance. The phrase has been known to describe gender, sexual, and spiritual identity differences.
So then there's intersex, which is a term for a combination of chromosomes, hormones, internal sex organs, and genitals that differs from the two expected patterns of male or female. So this is technically also a medical condition, and so some people who are born like this may not consider themselves part of the queer community, but they are included because some people do consider themselves to be queer.
All right, starting off with the sexualities, we have a classic gay or homosexual, experiencing attraction solely to some members of the same gender. It can be used to refer to men who are attracted to other men, women who are attracted to other women, also be used as an umbrella term along with queer.
Then there's lesbian. So this refers to a woman who is primarily attracted romantically, erotically, and or emotionally to other women.
All right, you have bisexual and biromantic, a person who experiences attraction to two people of two or more genders, usually including those of their own gender.
And then you have pansexual or panromantic. This is a person who experiences attraction for members of all gender identities and expressions. And this is what that's what I identify as.
I also identify as pansexual. Now, a lot of the questions that we both get as pansexuals is, what is the heckin' difference between bi and pan? But let me get y'all straight. There is a multisexual spectrum that's basically anyone that is not homosexual. And this includes also polysexual and omnisexual. These four identities all broadly overlap, but they have some specific differences that can mean a lot to certain people. The biggest difference between bi and pan is that bi can be used if someone's attraction has some kind of restriction. That also goes with poly. While pan is most commonly used in the context of gender, sex, or expression not being a factor in attraction. Omnisexual is like pansexual, but you do feel different things when you are attracted to certain genders. Use whatever label you want. Sexuality is a spectrum. You've got no pressure to stick in a box.
So the next one that we want to cover is kind of the opposite of what we've been talking about earlier. So there's aromantic, which is experiencing little or no romantic attraction to others, and or has a lack of interest in romantic relationships and behavior. So aromanticism exists on a continuum from people who experience no romantic attraction or have any desire for romantic activities to those who experience low levels of romantic attraction and only under specific conditions, like a deep emotional connection. So there are some other terms on the spectrum. So you can be demi-romantic or gray romantic as well.
And then you have asexual, which is experiencing little or no sexual attraction to others and or a lack of interest in sexual relationships. Asexuality is also on a continuum, so people experience no to very little desire, longing, and those who only have attraction for specific circumstances. This again has the term demi or gray sexual.
All right. So then you have androsexual or gynosexual. So androsexual means attraction to males, men, and masculinity. Gynosexual means an attraction to females, women, and femininity. So these prefixes, andro and gyno, come from anthropological terms to describe general traits and attraction. Both of these terms are used mostly by the non-binary community who want a term to describe a binary attraction, but don't want to use lesbian, gay, or heterosexual.
You also have the polyamory and polyamorous community. Being a part of this queer community, it refers to the practice of desire for or orientation toward having ethical, honest, and consensual non-monogamous relationships. They are not cheaters, and if you call them, we will cut you.
All right, and then questioning refers to someone who's questioning and trying to discern their sexual or gender identity. This is what most queer folks have experienced because trying to put a definition on your feelings for people and gender can be difficult. Questioning your gender or sexual identity does not automatically signal that you are queer or trans. It's completely normal to question your identities and then realize that you're cisgender or heterosexual.
Recently, there has been a disturbing trend of pedophiles trying to make pedophilia a queer identity. From every queer person, LGBTQIA plus member, we would like to say you are absolutely not a part of this community. This also goes for the super straights. You are super transphobic and get out of my life. Thank you very much.
So these are certainly not all the identities in the community, just the ones that fit into a quick video. And also remember that our definitions are they're not all encompassing. There are so many different experiences and expressions of sexuality and gender. And so what we say is not the final word, just a little bit of information.
Thank you. See you guys next time.